Welcome. So tonight we're looking at this React Forms lab, and yeah, we'll just dive into it. I've already cloned the lab over, run npm install, got the dev server up and running, got tests loaded up in my terminal, so got all the setup done. So in this lab, you'll write forms, write and use controlled components, and write validation for form components. Controlled components. Now that we know how to handle form elements in React, excuse me, and how to use controlled components, it's time to put that knowledge to the test. This lab is fairly extensive, but you use many core React concepts here that will surface again and again. Time to get some practice in. General notes for this lab. Most of the DOM is pre-written for you in these exercises. Please do not remove anything that is already in the file. Most of it is necessary to ensure that the tests run correctly. And hence we already have all of this poem writer, login form, and Twitter message. So all this is looks like we're going to have probably three different components in this lab. When instructed to save a value in the state, it doesn't matter what key you use as long as it's in there. Okay. Twitter message. Open the components Twitter message.js file. Source components. Twitter message.js. So this is our first component. So let's look at index. It has Twitter message with a prop coming in of max characters. Okay. Let's leave that over there. All right. All right. What's going on here? This component takes one prop, max characters, which is a number representing the maximum amount of characters a message can have. You'll find an input type equals text in this component. Input type equals text. If I can get back to make this a controlled component by adding the necessary props to the input element. Its value should be saved in the component's state. Show the remaining characters in the component. It doesn't matter how you render it as long as the number is correct. No need to guard against input that is too long. You can let the counter reach negative values. Okay. Tweet. Where's my, here we go. Oh, it's actually the last tests here. Saving input value in state should update the state when typing. Okay, so let's look at, we should have, sweet. For some reason, my React dev tools don't always work. I think it has something to do, I don't know, but okay. So this is the one we're looking at. Currently have this prop and no state. So we want to get state for this. So let's start with that. All right, so we have an empty state. Structure, super, state. Since we're dealing with some input, let's say value equals an empty string, and that can be the string that we're going to put in our input or our tests. Saving input value in state, character counter. Okay, so we need to save our input value in the state. So the first thing we need to do is get the value from here. Well, yeah, let's do that. So value equals this.state.value. So we're connecting our input box to the state. So as the state changes, the input box will change. And we'll see that in our browser, which has refreshed. So now we have a value here. We can't type. You can't see it, but I'm typing. You can probably hear it with my keyboard. But nothing's updating. And that's because the state is wired to this value. So if we change this value, typing now, enter that, we see that our box updates. Still can't delete or do anything else, but now we have our state wired to our message. So now we need to update our state as we type so that it's a circle. So we type, the state updates, and then it renders the values from the state into our input box. Thus, it looks like we're typing directly into the input box, but really we're catching our inputs and quote unquote typing into our state. We update our state, and that's what updates what we see in the input box. So let's say onChange equals this dot handle change, and then we'll need to write that function. So we'll need a handle change function here. And let's pass that an event into our arrow function. And then we want to set our state. And that's a function that takes an object. That value is what we're changing. And then we need our event and our target dot value. And that should connect the dots for us. So on change, when this input box changes, when we type into this box, we're calling this function handle change. That's going to take the event that just happened, which is going to be our, our entering text every time we enter any sort of anything into that box. So that'll be whether it's a letter, a number, whatever it is, but it's singular when we each change. And then it's taking the event and its target. And the target of the event is this input and the value from that target. That value is going to be what we've typed into it and what's there. So it's going to take the value that's currently there plus whatever we've typed in, fire that off, and update the state. And then this is going to see that it's going to, since the state is changed, it's going to re-render, and there's going to be a new value for this .state.value. And it all happens so fast that we don't even see any lag here. But we'll see that the state over here is updating as we type. Make that bigger. So state updates now as we type. Cool. So we should have a test passing now. Yeah, it looks like it. We're at 9. We were at 10 before. Saving input value in state should update the state when typing. Should update the remaining character counter, should update the counter when typing. So I want to do the same sort of thing now. Let's create, we have an input. Let's just create a P tag here and say, I'll close that, just type in between it. Remaining characters. And this we can do some JSX, some very straightforward subtraction. So we can say this dot props dot max characters minus this dot state dot value dot length. So we're taking the prop that was passed in, this 140, or subtracting the length of whatever the string is, and we're just putting that in the DOM as text. We should be able to see that here. So it starts at 140 because there's nothing in here. And as we type, now we're typing and it's updating just a whole bunch of spaces. So we can see that once we get past it, it goes negative, and that's just because we're not handling for that. So that should be a couple more tests, I believe. Yep, sweet. Down to 7. Should show the remaining character counter, should update. There we go. Not too bad, I don't think. Login form. Open the components, login form. All right. Login form. Let's see, what does this take? On submit equals login. Login is a function that takes a username and a password, and console logs that login. Okay. So we have a callback function going into this here. All right. So let's look at the login form now. It's going to be a little bit more complex than our first one. We can get Okay. This component takes one prop, on submit, which is a function that gets called when the form is being submitted. Okay, we kind of looked at that. You'll find two inputs in this component, input type text and input type password. Make this a controlled component by adding the necessary props to these inputs. Their values should be saved in the component state. Okay, so we're going to implement something very similar where we have this state updating locally with the username and password input, and we'll just write a function that'll handle that. We'll write one function that'll handle both of those cases. And that'll be good. For an example of an input would look like input ID equals test-username, type equals text, name equals username, value equals this.state.username, on change equals this.handle input change. Okay. Remember that you can retrieve the input, man, that's misspelling, name and value of an event.target from the JS event, JavaScript event. Add the necessary event handler to the form element in order to call the onSubmit callback prop. The onSubmit callback prop should only be called if both fields are filled in with any value. Okay. Okay, we'll figure that one out. So let's start, what were we starting with? Making this a controlled component. So yeah, let's wire up. Yeah, let's not worry about 6 or 7 right now. Let's just wire up all the controlled components. So let's see if our tests tell us anything specific about this. Besides big errors, saving input values in state. Should save the username in state. Should save the password in state. Component is not a function. Okay, so I'm thinking that let's just go with username, and that'll be an empty string, and password, that'll also be an empty string. So we'll want to do very similar to what we did before, and say a value equals this.state.username, username. And then a value equals this.state.password. So we got those two. And then we'll want to handle the change. So let's say on change equals this.handle change. And then on change equals this.handle change. And I like binding in my function up here, like you saw before, handle change equals E. Binding the event like this. You can do this type of thing, but I just think it keeps the code cleaner down here. And that's why I do it that way. So do we need anything else? We have an ID, a type, a value. Oh, so we also need to set, let's see if it showed it in here. Name. So we have this name as well. What the name is going to allow us to do is know which one we're looking at. So let's say name equals username. Name equals password. That's going to allow our event to grab that info for us. You can retrieve the input name and value of an event target. So without that, we wouldn't know which one we were dealing with, so we'd have to create a different handler for each. However, once we have the name and the value, we're going to be able to connect them together. So we can do the name, const name equals e.target.name. and then const value equals e.target.value. So now no matter which one we're working with, those will update accordingly. And we can create a set state method that will work for both. And what am I looking for? Oh, name value. And that should handle that for us. But pretty sure. We'll find out. All right, let's look at our login form. Wired up a decent amount already. All right, username, Seth. All right, our username is updating. Password, most insecure password ever is password. There it is. Cool. Let's see. 2018. It's connected. Okay. Now we need to connect this to actually do something. Let's go back to VS Code and check our tests. Okay, things are changing. Input values. All right, so now we need to call the onSubmit callback prop. So let's first call it. Okay, this is working because it's not even calling it yet. So let's work on calling it, and then we'll work on the logic for making sure that they're not empty. So that's going to be on our form. We're going to do onSubmit, and that equals this dot, let's just say handle submit. And the reason we're going to do this here and not just call this dot props dot, what is it, login, or I guess this dot props dot onSubmit, is we need a little bit of logic in here. So we need to pull the username and password, and we need to prevent default, and we have to do a couple different things. So we're going to take care of that. Let's see, handle submit, and we got our event there. And so we wouldn't be able to do our prevent default if we just called the callback. And as that's one of our tests, should call the prevent the default action. That's not good grammar. When the form is being submitted. So let's see.
Ask a quick question, please.
Yeah.
So we're calling the onSubmit function over here in the form, but we could have passed. Oh, never mind. I was going to say we could have passed this function down, but that is what we're doing. We're taking this function handle submit, right, and we're passing it down as a prop, the function itself.
So we're going to call that function.
I guess that's the question. Where are we calling this from?
So
or
this login
page
is being passed down into our login form here as onSubmit. So we have this function this callback function that we haven't done anything with yet, and it's going to be this dot props dot onSubmit. So we have this right here is going to be the one that's in our index.
Okay.
So we need to wire it up so that this form is going to use the this.props onSubmit. Now, if we had the prevent default logic in our index.js, we could just do this. However, I don't think our tests are going to like that because it's not going to implement the prevent default. So we see this test is passing now because we're calling the callback prop, but this should call the prevent default action, and this should not call on submit callback prop, and the username or password fields are empty, are not being handled. And since this lab's README said to leave everything that's there alone, up here, do not remove anything that is already in the file. I don't want to mess with this this function, because we could implement that here. But I just want to leave this one alone and use it as is. So we're going to call this, but we're going to call it not right here and on submit. We're going to call it a little bit differently so that.
So does that mean there's going to be two on submit functions being called? One in the internal one in the index.js, and then this outer one is going to be called?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, so we're going to have an on submit in this login form component, and that's going to do our prevent default, as well as that logic of making sure that the username and the password field have some data in it, and then that's going to call, once it knows that for sure, it's going to call the one that's in index.js. So
it calls this one first. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and the naming can be confusing at times.
But they're both called on submit, so like, why is one going first? I guess
they're just working their way out. This on submit here, all it knows about is this form. This is a function on this form.
Right.
It's a handler. So this on submit is there going to be, it's going to be available to us on, it's it's popping up, JSX attribute on the form. So any form we can use on submit on. Cool. So this isn't connected to the one coming from props.
So this happens first.
So yeah, when we click the on submit, when we click the login button, the form is going to do its thing. And the form doing its thing in JSX is saying on submit, okay, when I click the button, what am I supposed to do? And we're going to tell it here, handle submit, go to that function. And then we go to that function and we're going to prevent default. So the form isn't going to do anything else, and we're going to take over and do what we want to do with the form.
I got it. Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay. Okay. So we've prevented default, and we have our username and our password in the state. And this is going to take our username and our password. So let's get that pulled out. This dot and submit. Yes. So let's pull those out, and then we can do some logic on them. And I'm just going to use ES6 assignment here, because username and password are both in the state as username and password.
Yeah. So
object to object, so that will set those for us. And now we can say if what's our if? We want to allow a submit, they're not empty. So my Booleans always get me confused. If is it not username is true,
or not password, right?
Not password. Then, okay. If they don't have something in them, then we would want to do nothing.
Just return.
Yeah, so I think we want the other way. So if that fails,
okay,
then we don't want to do anything. But if that succeeds, because they both have content in them, instead of putting an else here, yeah, we can just have one if block.
Because the function just returns undefined automatically.
Yeah, so we can just say this dot props dot on, is it submit, right? On submit. And that will take our username and password. let's put space there, make it a little bit easier to see. So we're saying first we intercept our submit when we click, and we send it to the function in this component. Then we stop the form from doing its default work. We assign the username and password variables to the strings that they currently are in the state. If they both come back true, so they're not empty strings, then we go ahead and call our function that's in index that's being passed in the props, this.props.onSubmit. We pass it the username and password, and that should console log for us. So let's see. One is our test passing. No. So we'll see what's going on here. Might be some logic that we're missing. Let's go to console. Undefined with undefined. Okay, so something's not working right. So let's look at our state. Okay, so those are updated. Something's not working right.
In the index.js, before, oh, never mind, sorry.
Oh, no problem. Let's see. This.state, username, password. Should be working right.
Oh, we said if username or password, so we need if either one is empty. So it has to be if username and password. Right? I think so.
Yes, because then if either one is false, it'll fail.
Yeah.
But the other way, if either one was true, it would let it through.
Oh, because we started off with the not. That's how we missed that, right? We started off.
Okay. Let's see. Let's see what the test says. There we go. Okay, so that should be doing what we need now. Actually, want to see the console. Still giving us undefined. It's passing tests, but it's coming back as undefined.
Could it be some kind of ES6 thing that empty strings are not considered false, or that doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah, but these aren't empty strings because we've typed them in and they're in state.
Oh, so why is it undefined?
Yeah, looks like our variables aren't getting passed
But
properly.
what's logging that? Oh, I
So
think I know why.
that is in index right here.
Because it's expecting an object. It's one of those ES6 object things. Username and password should be one object that's split into username and password. And we're passing in two separate variables.
Yeah, so we need to pass state, I guess, in.
Oh, you could just pass the state itself.
Yeah.
Oh, ES6 is amazing.
Let's see. So can we... I think we still need to do this, though, to check both of those. And then...
Yeah, that's the most elegant, right? Otherwise we have to state.password and this.
Yeah, I was trying to think if there's a way to qualify if the object is true or false, but I don't think that'll work. Like if this could be simpler, but I don't think so.
Yeah, end up with some kind of loop that's more complicated than everything.
Yeah. Okay, so that still passes tests. Let's see if it actually works now, the way it's supposed to. This should have refreshed, but just do it again. Okay, there we go. Yeah.
Nice.
I guess I should type a different word there to make it distinguished. Oh, password manager keeps trying to save. Log in. Cool. Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. So poem writer. Open the components poem writer file. All right. I'm just looking over here. Okay, nothing's getting passed to that one. This one. You'll find one text area in this component. Make this a controlled, component. Recall that controlled components in React render dynamically based on some piece of props or state. Its value should be saved in the component state. Okay, that's very similar to what we've been doing already. You'll also find an error element in the markup. This element should only be shown if the poem is not valid. The rules for a valid poem structure are as follows. The poem has 3 lines. The first line has 5 words. The second line has 3 words. The third line has 5 words. Be sure to account for users accidentally adding too many spaces. This means that I am a furry dog is not a valid first line of the poem. The first line has 5 words. This means that I am a furry dog is not a valid first line. Okay, so no extra spaces are allowed. Ensure the error message is still showing if the user deletes all of their content from the text area box. Okay. Well, the error message is there. So yeah, let's target this one. All right. So first thing I want to think of is the state that we're going to need for this. So we're going to need something for our text to make it controlled. So just call that poem. And then I want to have a Boolean of valid. And that will default to false, because when we first start, it'll always be false. And then we'll do some sort of check. The thought being, we will fire a function every time we change that'll check the text and update this. So let's connect the dots. Let's do our handle change. Yeah, we can do that one. And then the handle change will, yeah, that'll do everything else for us. Yeah. So we have value equals this dot state dot poem. And these are going to be very similar to the 2 we've just done for our input boxes. And an on change of this dot handle change, which we'll need to write. And then we can, all right. Yeah, I think that's good for now. Handle change, I'll put the event in there. All right. And then, yeah, we can do this part right now because we know what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
So if this is true, we want this to disappear. If it's false, we want to show it. So
do we need to update the state as well every time someone types in a character?
yes, and we'll do that all in handle change.
So everything's going to happen there. We're going to check for the poem and change what's going on.
Yeah. Well, we'll change the state, and part of that will be calling another function, I think. Because I think putting it all inside handle change is not a good separation of concerns. So we'll have one more function that we write. But right here, I just want to handle the visual part. So let's wrap this in JSX tags. And this can just be a ternary. So we can say valid this dot state dot valid, and that can be null or that should do it. So if the
How's it
state,
going to show the actual poem, though?
oh wait,
The
I'm in the wrong spot, I think. Yeah, all this is in the wrong spot.
Oh, this is a
Okay.
separate div?
This is the div that actually has this error message in it. I'm in this div right now. I haven't been inside this box. So
oh, I see. It's a text area separate.
yeah. So this needs to be in the text area. Our value and our unchange. There, without taking that off. That needs to go here.
Okay.
Yeah, it was off on that because that's for the input. And then this is what we want to wrap and just make disappear if it is valid. So put that there, and there. So we'll say, looking at this, error, this right here,
Cool.
will make null if it is valid. So this.state.valid
that makes sense.
So yeah, if it is valid, we'll render null, which will just be nothing. And then if it isn't, we see this div that has our error in it. And that's a simple way to just take care of that. And that's why we made this Boolean here to handle that. So we could just use a ternary in this instance.
Cool.
And that's a nice pattern that can be used throughout React. You set a Boolean of something, and then as long as that's updating with changes, you can create the ternary, because when the state changes, it's going to re-render, and that will update your view and what you're seeing. So this will always be called whenever the state changes. So as soon as this becomes true, this will swap, and it won't be there anymore. So cool. So we have our onChange, and we have our value, and yeah, cool. So let's do our handle change. So we need to update our state. It's this dot set state, and we want poem to be a dot target dot value. And then we will say valid. And here we want to, let's say,
this dot valid. Oh, because it just is valid.
And this is where we're going to call this helper function that we need to write. Function is valid, and we want that. That needs to get the poem.
Oh, that's why you don't have to write this is valid, because you added the function keyword.
Yes. So
I didn't get that. So what the scope of this function, sorry to drive you crazy about the scope of this function you just wrote that's, I don't know what I'm asking. Let me think. That could be accessed from anywhere inside of the class?
Actually,
not from an instance?
I think this needs to be a helper function. Unexpected token, constructor method. No.
So you just do
I think
that,
that's what we need.
Out of this, this dot is valid. Yeah, because I think ES6, right, has some things that aren't implemented yet. I'm totally like...
Yeah, there's some stuff that's funky sometimes with the functions. I think that'll do it for us.
Cool.
But we do need to pass it. I think if we try and nest all this stuff like this, it's going to have issues. Because we want to pass it the whole string that's in the poem in the text area. And that's how we're going to confirm if it's has all these things. That's not what I'm looking for. So we need to verify these things, but we need the whole poem. I think that'll do it. Let's see.
That's good. This is the fun part now.
Yeah. Well, let's see what we have in here. I think I haven't even tested anything to see if it's working, but yeah, okay. Let's look at our React. Poem, okay. So we have our state.
Perfect.
Okay, it's updating. This is undefined, and that's right, because if it's, we haven't returned anything from that function yet.
Right.
And are we getting anything out here? No. Oh. We're not getting any strings. Let's pass. Let's just say poem. Let's do it this way and see if that will get us the string.
If it's updating, it must be, no? Like,
yeah, I would think so. Granted, we used it twice, so I guess it's better to not repeat ourselves. It's more dry this way. And we'll see if it does what we're looking for. Poem. There it is.
yeah.
Okay, so now as this is being passed, we can verify if it's in the right structure and return true or false from here, which will populate if it's valid, true or false. All right. Okay, so first we need to do I need
I guess it's all about the lines, no? We got to see.
Yeah.
So just split it, just like poem dot split, I guess, and add a little end line in there, the /n.
Yeah, so let's say we'll split it on the new line.
Or we could use a regular expression just to check how many new lines there are, but I think it would be better to split it, no? So we can check each line individually.
Yeah. And then poem that split on the new line. And then dot length be all that we need? So that'll tell us the number of lines?
I guess if a person has an extra enter, though, it would still be valid, no? Oh, no, it wouldn't be, because it has to be a certain amount of lines. So, yes, so this has to be 3 for it to be valid, I'm pretty sure.
So we can check that to be 3.
Yeah.
And then if poem lines equals 3.
Well, if it doesn't equals 3, then it's not valid.
Yeah.
Let's see what to do just for testing's sake.
Then we want to count the words of each of those elements. So we're going to want, let's do this, count words of a line. And that way we can return a split on the space dot length.
What if we return a split of a regular expression of like just, I think it's S and then a plus? Because we're not supposed to have extra spaces.
Yeah.
I mean, let's try this first. Keep it simple, no? First.
Yeah. The extra spaces are going to cause a problem. We could, whatchamacallit, we could filter this. Filter, and then call length. What's the syntax again? JS filter. I don't know. I think I just shy away from regular expressions.
Okay.
Current value. Where is, here we go, jobs. MDN. Creates a new array with all elements that pass the test implemented by the provided function.
So we'd filter out any empty, so we're counting the words really, right? And we'd filter out any empty spaces in the array.
Yeah. Filter. Filter JS empty element. And filter end to end. And to true.
Oh, that makes sense.
And so, because if it's empty, it's not going to be true. So it's going to take those out. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But if you write the word true, though, it's always going to return true.
Let's do the end-to-end one.
Yeah.
And get the length. And then I think now we have, if we have 3 lines, I wonder if we need this up here too. We'll put it up here to be safe.
Okay.
And then if we have 3 lines, okay, so if we have poem is 3 lines, and then if we have, what is it? Count words, and we pass in poem lines.
So you need to get rid of the length
0.
and the const. I mean, up in the isValid function, the first line, all the way in the end, the dot length, because poem lines isn't the array anymore, it's just the length.
Yes. So we need
to take that dot length and put it in the if, or maybe just make a new.
Yeah. Let's say poem array.
Cool.
Something like this. And then we get our first line, our second line, our third line. And if they all come back true, array. First line is supposed to be 3. So 3, 5, 3. Oh, wait.
5, 3.
5, 3, 5.
Yeah.
Equals 5. And then we'll do and. Do this again. We'll make it 3. And we'll change that also to 1. And make this 2. This 3.
Just return that?
Then, yeah, because we would want this would come back true.
Yes, otherwise it'll be undefined, which is falsy.
Yeah, which is fine for that. Yeah, let's see. Count words is not defined. Oh, this. And this. Okay, there we go. So what is it? 5 words. Oh, Now 3. We need 5 more words. Oh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 3, 5. It disappeared there for a second.
Interesting.
Did we? Oh, it's still 3 here.
Okay.
I was going to say, maybe I didn't copy and paste that right.
I was completely baffled.
All right. 1. I'm just going to put numbers because it'll be quicker. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It worked, but it shouldn't because there's an extra space.
So I guess the filter we don't need because we want to leave those there. On the words.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe. Oh, that did work.
Yeah. And
there's no way to cheat that. What if you put an extra space in between? Yeah, I feel like the white spaces are. See if we can trick that. Like you put the empty space after, maybe, or in between 2 and 3, like two spaces between. Oh, that is working.
it is reading the space as a word, though. So even without that there, it thinks
I
there is
see.
one.
That's the problem.
I wonder if that was good. Okay.
Oh, that does work. Okay.
Yeah. So I think the README might not be exactly what's needed because this is not allowing white space. And this is saying should not show an error when the poem is valid, but has extra white space.
Well, it should not show an error. I thought it should. I totally misunderstood that.
Yeah, I think the README is off. Because this is not a valid first line of the poem, which has extra white space. Cool.
Interesting.
So yeah, I think this isn't right.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, either the test or part 9. One of them is off, but yeah, cool.
If it works, right?
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, cool. Any other questions about this lab?
No, I think that was good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, thanks for coming out and spending a little bit of time with me on that. There was nobody in here when I started that lab, so I was like, oh, but you joined. Yeah, it was good.